Because of the way the notes are laid out on the guitar, guitar music tends to be in particular keys. As you may have already learned in this course, those keys are the major keys, C, A, G, E, and D. And in terms of minor keys, we have E minor and A minor. These are the keys that make the most use of the guitar's open strings. Open strings have a distinct sound to them, probably because they're making the fullest use of the complete length of the string. It's also a fact that open string chords in general tend to be easier to play than closed chords. All of this is just a way to say that your time is well spent if you focus on learning songs in C, A, G, E, and D. Focus on those keys, especially in the earlier part of your learning the guitar. Playing in other keys, though, is going to come up at some point, and it is essential. And the guitar is an incredibly versatile instrument, so I don't want to imply that the guitar is limited to those keys we just talked about. But in the music we're learning in this course, the 7 basic keys, C, A, G, E, D, E minor, A minor, tend to form a core of essential chord shapes and chord families. So more often than not, old-time musicians use a capo to access the remaining 5 keys. So C sharp, B flat, A flat, E flat, F. Old-time musicians, traditional musicians tend to use a capo to access those keys. So make sure you have the accompanying PDFs in front of you for this lesson, and you're going to want a capo with you. I use a Shub capo, and there's all kinds of capos out there. This one's not so good if you need to make a really quick change. The kind that Kaiser makes a capo where you grip it and you can take it on and off really quickly. I find these Shub capos to be very reliable, dependable. Another thing is you're going to want to have watched the video about the musical alphabet before you watch this video, because you're going to want to be very firm in your understanding of how the musical alphabet and the notes of the musical alphabet fall on the guitar strings to really understand this. So using a capo boils down to changing the root note of a chord to a different root note, and in the process changing the entire chord. Well, what is a root note? Well, that's why we have our PDF chord tones and the basic chords. Very simply, the root note is simply the note that is the root of the chord, the same note that gives the chord its name. So in a C chord, we're playing a C on the 5th string 3rd fret. And notice that that note is circled in the diagram. The other C is up here on the 2nd string 1st fret. So they're both root notes. In the key of C, any note that is a C is the root note. Okay? In terms of the capo, we're more interested in these root notes that are on the lower strings. So now, what I said a second ago was, using a capo boils down to changing the root note of a chord to a different root note, and in the process changing the entire chord. We want to think of this C chord as a shape. Our fingers are in a certain arrangement, certain frets, certain strings, and if we keep that arrangement and move it around, we should still have a C chord. So now I've moved that note, C note, up here. I'm on the 7th fret on the 5th string. That's an E note. So the theory is that as long as I'm playing a C shape with my fingers, and I'm kind of using that note as a reference, I should get an E chord. But I don't. Why is that? Because I didn't take into account the open strings. So the three fingers I'm using for the C chord are only part of the story, right? There's an open G string and an open E string, also part of the chord. So that's where the capo comes in. If I move my hand back up to my 3rd finger is on the 7th fret, I need to deal with those 2 open strings, which are now destroying my nice major chord. So that's where the capo comes in. And this is the way I would recommend getting a handle on, wrapping your mind around how capos work. Got my C chord. So you need 2 pieces of information. You need to know that the root note in this chord shape is here. And then you need to know the names of the notes on the 5th string. There's a PDF for that, by the way. We're going to look at the notes on the 6th string and the 5th string in particular, you need to know that this is an E. Okay? Those two pieces of information. That if you move this shape up so that the root note is here, that it's going to be an E. Once you arrive at that, the rest is just sort of visualizing, well, where do I need to put the capo? Where is the nut? I think you should think of the capo as a replacement nut. You're essentially making your guitar shorter, and the capo is taking the place of the nut. So when you strum the C chord, the nut is right here, right next to your first finger. So you're playing a note on the first fret, and the nut is right here. So if we take our C chord and we move up here, well, my first finger's now on the 5th fret, so the nut would have to be on the 4th fret. Let's give that a shot. So, like I said, the capo is a replacement for the nut. We just shortened our guitar by 4 frets. Now I'm going to make that C shape again with my 3rd finger on the 7th fret. And lo and behold, we get an E chord. We're now playing an E chord. And the really cool thing is any little licks or runs or things like that you learned with your E chord are going to work, or with your C chord rather, are going to work with the E chord. But the really cool thing is anything you learned about playing in the key of C will now work with this new shortened guitar and will sound like it's in the key of E. So I can do my C chord, my F chord, my G chord, all little walk-ups that you know in the key of C will work in this new position. Except, technically, you're playing an E chord, an A chord, and a B chord. Crazy, right? Now, you don't need to give yourself a headache over this, to be honest. If you're playing, let's say you're playing with a piano player or a fiddler, and they really want to do a tune in the key of E, and you have some pet licks that you want to play in the key of C. So if you have this knowledge of how to use the capo, now you just pretend you're in the key of C. You don't really need to be telling yourself as you go around, oh, this is really an A, this is really a B. You are in the key of E. You're simply using shapes from the key of C, the familiar shapes, okay? So this is how we access things like the key of E flat. Now I'm doing the same C shape, but my 3rd finger is on the 6th fret, and that note is an E flat. So spend some time with this. It's going to take maybe a little while to become really comfortable. That's really the best way I can explain it, though. And like I said, it does require a certain amount of knowledge. And I think that the PDF that shows you the chord tones, the root notes of the basic chords, is going to be a big help. And then knowing the notes on the neck really is a really useful piece of information. And I think using the capo without knowing that is really tricky.